been asked to talk about this before. I never sugarcoat it because what we do at Esquire is produce a men's magazine, and it has a male gaze, and it's aimed at men specifically. And so this is the controversial bit that people don't like, but I always say the truth about it. The women that we feature in the magazine are ornamental. That is how we that is how we see them.
The audience making noises there.
And we feel, sorry.
We have sharp objects.
Yeah, I know. Well, I could lie to you if you want and say that we're interested in their brains as well. But on the whole, we're not. And they're there to be beautiful objects. They're objectified. I think it's interesting that is also the case in the newspapers, as you say, which seems to me to be odd and anti-feminist in the sense that if the only representation, we all know the stories where there's a financial story or something and there's a picture of Naomi Campbell and you think, what's the connection between Naomi Campbell and this story? And it's like Naomi Campbell once went to Marks and Spencer's or something in the story about the share price of Marks and Spencer's. And I think what we do is much more honest. The fact is that men regard women, heterosexual men regard women in many, many ways. So they're our sisters, our daughters, our wives, our mothers, and we do see them as three-dimensional human beings. But there are certain times when we just want to look at them because they're sexy. And just one of the things, it's not the only thing Esquire does by any means. We have loads and loads of stuff for men. But one of the things men like is pictures of pretty girls. So we provide them with pictures of pretty girls, and those pretty girls are, for that purpose, they are ornamental. And this sounds even worse, but it's the same way as we also provide them with pictures of cool cars or whatever. It's a kind of thing that you might want to look at because you like the look of it. Having said this, the women's media does exactly the same thing. So women's magazines do exactly the same thing. I think our photographs of women, I think we're actually less rigid in our idea of what a woman ought to look like.
Oh
so
God, that is so
we reflect, I think that we're at least or possibly more ethnically diverse, at least possibly more, actually more shape diverse, if you like. It's true. You look at very high fashion magazines. The women are much thinner than we would ever put into our magazine, and they're all really thin. And the women we put in our magazine are not all really thin. We also put older. We have older women in. I mean, not really old, but in their 40s. Not really old. We often do. Cameron Diaz, Rachel Weisz is on our cover, she's 43. Cameron Diaz was on a cover about 3 issues ago, she's in her 40s.
They've been on the
Women's magazines.
Bizarre as well. I mean,
most women's magazines don't put them on the cover.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yes, they do. I've seen Cameron Diaz and Rachel
Not for a while.
Weisz.
Not
Rachel
for a while.
Weisz was just
Rachel
on the
Weisz,
cover of one
Harper's
of them.
Bazaar does.
I mean, not going to have a go at Alex, but I have to say, you know, the thing that really upsets me is that when I listen to my godchildren who are aged between kind of 10 and 17 thinking that they aren't good enough because they don't look like the women that kind of appear in your magazines, and they're all talking about having cosmetic surgery, it just is horrendous that these are beautiful and clever and empathetic women that don't feel good enough about themselves because...
But they don't read Esquire. You're young
young
women. They read women's media on the whole.
They see it on the front of the cover. Guys talk about it. They have brothers.
The same cover as
beautiful.
the same people are on our covers are on the covers of Cosmo and Elle and Bazaar and Vogue and all the other millions of women's magazines, and all the advertising aimed at women that projects that image of femininity,
So
which is,
we're on our orange
lingerie
numbers here,
adverts are not for
guys.
me.